This episode and others like it are made possible by the generous support of my patrons on Patreon. If you would like to help support this channel and get early access to every video, consider becoming a patron on patreon.com/CityScapes. Hi guys, CityScapes here and welcome back! Welcome back to Verville episode 46. On screen right now you can see the result of the last session from Verville. We finished this huge chunk of the city that marks the edge of Verville, which will finally enable us to do some first-person rides. After completing this milestone, we move on today to the complete other side of Verville, and as the title of the video spoils it already, we will finally build the really old town of Verville. The whole city started from here in historic perspective. So this is a build I was looking forward to since I started this whole series. We're gonna use a lot of those Titans Old Town assets, the Renaissance buildings, and I'm just really excited. It's gonna look really cute, really cozy, and I think we should get started right away. Since I had this idea for such a long time already, I really wanted to get it right. And since I'm no historian, I needed a little bit of help. And who else would be better suited for the job than Verumpositor? I asked him quite some questions about how to develop this whole old town thingy here. And he was so kind to draw a layout for the old town, so I could just follow his guidelines. Let's have a look, shall we? So I sent him over a screenshot of the whole area, and he imported it to his iPad where he could draw all the lines. You can see here he's using the bluish color for the roads and red for the buildings or city blocks, just so it's nicely distinguishing for me and just make life a bit easier. Of course, I asked him to do a screen recording so I can later on show this in the video right now here, as you can see. And I just think with this kind of collaboration it wasn't really too hard to do. I could just nicely rely on the work of Verumpositor and follow his sketch. So let me shrink down his screen recording to the bottom right corner of the screen so you can still follow a little bit his drawing while I am already working on the shoreline. Before that, I just quickly finished the road layout. I hope you don't mind that it wasn't too visible, but I mean, it's just dragging roads everywhere. I used Chameleon's pedestrian priority roads. They are completely flat, which is nice because I'm later on gonna cover everything with cobblestone decals. And a lot of those roads I narrowed them down with Node Controller, because obviously in an old town the streets are really narrow. They are not 8 meters wide, at least not everywhere, just in the main alleys. Another thing that I should quickly mention is in the beginning I made this zigzag star-shaped canal. I used the vanilla canals for that and just made them sharp-edged with a Node Controller as well. That worked surprisingly well. That was really cool to see. Another thing is the minster you can see in the back there. This one I made in a late night session. It's completely made out of procedural objects, one of Titan's churches and a handful of other assets. For instance, some Italian tower. I think it's made by Ernesto. Of course it should represent the Großmünster from Zurich. And I think I got to look pretty spot on actually. So quite proud of that little build as well. In a second I will show you the whole area from Google Earth, so you get an idea about the real life place I took inspiration from for this whole area here. The next step was to fill all of these lots with nice old town buildings, and it's really cool because the workshop recently experienced an influx of new old town buildings, so I really couldn't wait to finally use them. In front of the Minster here we have this elevated plaza with some shops underground. For that I used some high fashion brand shops like Gucci and all that sort. And I also recycled that arc asset I made out of another Armesto building, I think it was, and placed them in front of them. I think that also really added to this whole area here. I think that looks just great. On the left and right side I placed a pedestrian path so people can actually walk up there, and of course they also needed some stairs to get up there. As for a rim for this whole elevated plaza here, I used the Monaco railings. They also fit very well color-wise and also design-wise in this whole area here. I think it just all fits together very nicely in here. I'm also always jumping a bit forward and backward with detailing and filling city blocks, so it's not getting boring for myself to build in this whole area here. So right now I felt like placing some half-timbered houses. Of course I went for the ones Titan made. They look absolutely amazing. I mean, look at this roof here, and also just the facade. It looks amazing. And because it's an old town, I always try to squeeze buildings together as tightly as I possibly can to create very narrow path between the city blocks and the buildings in here. I'm struggling a bit to find the right words to explain how I felt during this build process here, because somehow it varies a lot from other builds I made in Verville so far. I mean, I didn't really build an old town yet. Verville consists mostly of buildings from the late 19th century, and of course a lot of modern stuff as well. So it was pretty nice to have a pretty clear idea of what buildings to use here. Of course, all the Titan stuff, some Acapulco houses, and I'm also using buildings from the creator Lilienherz, and probably some more. But yeah, the basis for the whole old town is definitely Titan's Renaissance buildings. And yeah, just packing everything very tightly together, creating nice cozy little alleys everywhere. It was just a really great feeling. And I'm already really excited to release the second episode. Of course, this is going to be a two-part episode. You know, it's quite some land to cover here at the old town. It's not possible to cram everything in one episode. Maybe even 2 episodes are not quite enough, but we will see. Maybe that's also a good point to mention that I actually started live streaming on Twitch. So if you want to get a close-up look at the whole build process and the city Verville in general, and just chat a little bit in real time, that's definitely the place to be if you want to do that. I'm gonna link the channel down in the video description as well, so feel free to tune in. I don't really have a schedule, but yeah, I'll definitely announce all my live streams on Twitter, on Discord as well, of course. So you probably won't miss it. In the future, I think I'm also gonna move the live streaming part to YouTube, just to reach a bit of a wider audience, because I know a lot of you are only using YouTube, and that's totally fine. I started off with Twitch to just be in a little bit of a smaller circle, you know, to get things up and running, checking out this live streaming stuff. But I enjoyed it a lot. It was really, really fun for me to do. And yeah, who knows? I think soon I'm gonna start streaming on YouTube as well and just see how it goes. So stay tuned for that. Oh yeah, and the reason I'm mentioning Twitch right now is because the second part of the Old Town episodes here was made on a live stream. So yeah, probably the next episode you will see is basically a selected or edited recording of my live stream. Unfortunately, I messed something up, so you're gonna see a weird OBS window on the bottom right corner of the screen, but that's not important for today's episode here. Okay, so why don't we have a look at Google Earth for a second here. As you can see, the Niederdörfli district is the oldest part of Zurich. The buildings are very crammed together. Everything is very tightly packed, and it has a very cozy feel to it. And of course, the landmark of Zurich, the Grossmünster. Yeah, so now you got an idea what area we are trying to replicate or just take a lot of inspiration from. Now let's move on to this nicely shaped city block, which is also prone to be very difficult to fill. First of all, I placed all the pedestrian path around it, because this is somehow the base infrastructure, I guess you could call it. And then I found this other Titan building, which absolutely fitted the area perfectly. I mean, the shape just felt like he made that building exactly for this area here. The only thing I had to do is to recolor it just ever so slightly and adjust the shape of it just a little bit. Then the next big challenge was what to do with this little area right in front of the building. There's quite some terrain changes going on there, so I needed to build a couple of terraces or just steps in the terrain, I guess you could say. As usual, I used this Revo wall for that stone wall. This one fits almost everywhere in the city. It just looks great. And just to make the area even more interesting, I used a lot of stairs, which are actually not functioning, but they just add to the whole look of a very layered area, I guess. With the ploppable surfaces, I finished off those platforms, and soon I can already move on with the detailing. But in here I figured it needed another platform, because as you can see, the terrain changes are actually pretty hefty. I guess it's about 2 to 3 meters or so. And with this middle platform, I thought, why not break up the grey look a bit and make it green, which gives us the opportunity to plant some really nice looking trees. While I'm just beautifying the terrain glitches in here a little bit, let me just briefly talk about that short intro segment about my patrons. I really hope it's not too obtrusive. I had the idea from some other channels on YouTube, and the reason why I'm pushing my Patreon account a little bit more is because I'm working on a successor series for Verville. And of course I want this series to be a step above Verville, of course. I know it's quite ambitious, but I really want to try to make one of the most realistic City Skylines cities, or at least YouTube series. I think that's something all of you would really enjoy as well. And this means I need a lot of custom assets, you know. And making an asset from scratch is really time consuming, as you can imagine. And so I would like to pay those awesome asset creators out there at least a symbolic price to show some appreciation for the absolutely incredible work they do here for all of us. I mean, for instance here, just look at this amazing castle Titan made here. I just had to use it in Verville. First I placed the pre-built castle, and then I completely replicated it in a modular fashion, because I needed the castle to be a procedural object. So I can still slightly tweak the whole thing here and there a little bit to perfectly fit the area. But as you can see, even the pre-built one already fitted pretty damn well in the area. I think it's a really nice addition to Verville. And then I made another rim, again of course with the Revo stone walls all around the whole castle here. And in the last step, putting in the floor of course as well with the ploppable surface pavement. After having another look at Google Earth, I saw that from time to time there were those kind of stairs with some small platforms on the bottom of it reaching into the river. I suppose it's some kind of dock for boats, but in real life I just see a lot of people chilling on those platforms there, having a beer or whatnot. And then I realized that the water looks a bit too deep in this general area. So I placed another terraforming network on it, sloped it a bit to the side with node controller, just to give the viewer the impression of the waters not being that deep. Then I had to decide what kind of fence I wanted to use for this whole area here, and I thought some very generic looking iron fence would really fit the whole area. And now you can see me copy pasting this whole, I don't know how you can call it, just those staircases reaching into the water there. Next to this tram stop, I thought it's a really nice place for a riverside restaurant. I mean, the views are really nice over here, looking over the river, probably some future boats that will go up and downstream. And to make it all nicely functioning, I mean it was functioning before, but of course I had to change the pedestrian path to an invisible one, change the width of the path with node controller a bit, just so people will walk on the full width of this boardwalk here. For a convincing Swiss touch, I added some brands to the Old Town buildings here. So here you can see the Laderach chocolate Swiss factory, accompanied by a nice flood going on. And yeah, just some other brands like this kiosk sign here. Thanks again for Sven Berlin for taking up my request and making some Swiss branded props. And it seems like it's already time for placing down some greenery. Not too much to say about this process, it's pretty straightforward, just trying to cover this whole planter here with greenery that's not too tall, of course, except for the trees. But I really enjoy those, this flower pack. I'm not sure what creator made those, but they look really amazing. I like them a lot. They just add this necessary splash of color in every planter you use them. This elevated plaza, I left it quite empty from greenery, except from one old looking tree. I thought that would fit pretty well, and it also reflects the real life place not too badly. The boardwalk also looked a bit too bland for me, so I decided to put some other planters on top of the rim there, and filled all of these flower pots with those London plane tree. They look really good. Started using them a lot in Verville. And here I thought, because you didn't see how I built Minster out of procedural objects, why not showing you how I built the city hall, the historic city hall of Verville. For that I used the same asset as I took those arches away from. I cut the whole building in half and mirrored it from side to side. And then I took a palace building from Titan and used only the roof and slapped it on top of everything. Of course, as always, adjusting the colors ever so slightly with those color rectangles from the procedural object mod, and moved the whole thing in place. I think later on I changed the roof color to a more reddish color. And now that this building was in place here, I immediately had the feeling of doing another little plaza right in front of it. I mean, that space was just perfectly shaped for another nice area where people can hang out. And I also needed a nice end for this pedestrian boardwalk, so later on I'm gonna place a nice staircase over there. And here I used those arches once again to make a water outlet on the bottom side of this building. Because in real life the historic city hall of Zurich also sits on the Limmat river, and somehow water passes under the building through some kind of tunnel system. I'm not sure if there's more to this or just not to disturb the water current. I really don't know, I just try to replicate the general look of it. Now, after copy pasting those trees, I tackled the challenge with this other staircase in here. Wanted it to make a curve, and of course I had to really cut out a lot of the footage for the episode here because it was too finicky and not really worth showing all the steps for you guys. But yeah, we already started the really small scale detailing, so I went for some bollards for this rim here, because sometimes you need to break up the repetitive pattern, you know. For instance, here with the iron fence all along the boardwalk. Now it was time for something else. Jumping back to the previous build, where we have those 3 different terraces. Of course, I used the Monaco railing once again, just because it looks so nice. And yeah, I wanted to do another restaurant on the upper terrace here, because I think this Titan building on the left side of the screen, this is probably a very grand old hotel, you know? I think that would probably make sense, right? And it's always those weird edges where a lot of different assets, networks or whatever come together. You need to cover the ugliness with something a little bit. I went for the planters in this case. And now we are already back at the other plaza once again, and I had the idea of placing down a chess field. This is something I saw quite often actually in Switzerland. Some public chess fields, and yeah, people are actually using them. I just thought it's a nice little addition. Of course, I cannot miss to place some fountains, because they are absolutely everywhere in Switzerland. Benches also always add to the realism, and are just a cheap little way to do some detailing. Just wish all of those benches would actually be parks so people can sit on them, and yeah, because right now I have to place prop people on all of those benches to get that convincing look, you know. But at least it's something, right? In here I felt like placing another fountain, nicely surrounded by those bushes and those colorful flowers again. And now I'm just finishing this elevated restaurant for the hotel here. Alrighty guys, so it has been over 20 minutes already and we are nearing the end of today's episode. Thank you each and everyone so much for watching. Hit that like button if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And as usual, if you would like to see more, check out my Instagram account. I post photorealistic screenshots over there. Twitter is pretty much an undefined spot. I post screenshots and random rants and just the usual Twitter stuff, I guess. If you would like to chat with like-minded people, join my Discord server. We have really great people over there. We can help you out with some stuff if you have any questions regarding mods or assets or just want to chat, feel free to join my Discord server. And of course, if you would like to push the boundaries of this channel and also fund future projects, please consider becoming a Patreon on patreon.com/CityScapes. Even $1 would already make a difference and get us closer to the goal of starting the new series. I'm really keen on doing that. But guys, that's been it for today. Really hope you enjoyed, and I'm looking forward to see you in the next one.